And God breathed the life into those dried bones. And the bones came together, bone to bone, sinew to sinew, and came to life. When we stand with those who have been persecuted, when we reach down to that man beside the road who has been passed by for so long, we are called upon to lift him up and testify, and with our faith, breathe life, unity.
Unchain Wall Street. They're going to put you all back in chains.
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me.
That little bit of embarrassment, I believe, comes straight from the Civil Rights era. Let's talk about it. Hello everyone, this is Keith. Welcome to the Ghetto Sapien channel, your home of inner city intelligence. And tonight, it's Sunday, I am wearing one of my custom designed t-shirts that I designed myself. Check it out. It says, "Fear God more than hurt feelings, speak fearlessly." And this t-shirt this comfortable, really high quality t-shirt, again, my design, wouldn't be possible without the top-notch printing house, the print work of I call it MC Squared. It's Modesty Custom Creations. Modesty's Custom Creations. She does great t-shirt work. She'll take your design and really pump out some high quality stuff. She also does mugs. She does hats. She does bumper stickers, the whole 9 yards. Highly recommended. Great work, and I'm glad I found her online. I will put the link to her Facebook page so you can check out her stuff yourself. It'll be in the chat, the comment section. Anyway, so that bit of embarrassment, which I really think it is pretty embarrassing, seeing Biden, Hillary, and Gore go in front of black churches and just say things I think they don't really believe in. It's just to get people excited. Where did he get that idea from that if they went up in front of the pulpit of the black church and said the right things, they would get like undying support? That had to come from somewhere. It's not just a coincidence. And if you notice, Al Gore was actually kind of decent with it. I mean, it's still embarrassing, but he at least put some effort into it. And then you had Biden was and Hillary was even worse. But there's really no need, I think they discovered, to put too much effort into what they were saying. They just need to just show up more or less and dial it in, because by then they secured the black vote solidly. For years and years and years, the Democrats can count on near 90 plus support from the black community. Again, no matter what they did, their performance didn't matter whatsoever. They just show up at the church, whip out some hot sauce out of a purse, and they're good. So where did this come from? Why did they feel so comfortable going in front of the churches and saying stuff that's just embarrassing that they would never say anywhere else? I think it's from lessons that both sides, the black church, the black community, and the Democrat Party and government learned from the Civil Rights era. The church was a catalyst for movements that really irritated the Democrat Party. Slavery abolition, they were not happy with that. The abolition movement started in the church. Civil rights also started in the church. I think by the time the Civil Rights era, the 60s, really came to a head, the Democrats are like, we got to figure out a way to get control of these movements. We got to do something in the church to just stop it, or at least control it after it started. So again, these movements start in the church. the Democrat Party, by time they became aware of it, it was already out in an environment. There was no way they could control it. It became, organic. So they lost the opportunity to, wrestle it and either stop it or at least make it move in their direction. So what the Democrats did was they got involved in the church. They got churchified, as you want to say. At least they became fearless about going into the black church and sounding as godly as they can. And then the results you saw there in the early video. And that is how they handled it. And you don't see any more movements starting within the black church. It stopped after the civil rights era. When that transition happened, I was always trying to figure it out, because the transition definitely did happen. Again, because you don't see movements starting from the church, at least nothing that the Democrat Party wouldn't have approved already. I mean, you have a church just recently that's talking about how great abortion is. That's starting from the church, and a pro-abortion church. I don't really consider that a church. But the Democrats have no problem with that. But they don't have anything. You won't see a pro-family movement coming out of the church. You won't see a movement for school choice coming out of the black church. That ain't happening. You won't see one that says we need fatherless homes. At least you don't hear it getting out there into the public like it used to, when it's really needed now. But you can't count on the black church to start these movements anymore. And again, I think the civil rights era is when it all changed. I'm going to play a video of LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson. He was the vice president under Kennedy. And after Kennedy was assassinated, he became the president. He ran one term, but he did a lot to change the direction of the black church. And here it is.
Freedom is the right to share fully and equally in American society, to vote, to hold a job, to enter a public place, to go to school. It is the right to be treated in every part of our national life as a person equal in dignity and promise to all others. But freedom is not enough. You do not wipe away the scars of centuries by saying now, you are free to go where you want and do as you desire and choose the leaders you please. You do not take a person who for years has been hobbled by chains and liberate him, bringing up to the starting line of a race, and then say, you are free to compete with all the others, and still justly believe that you have been completely fair. Thus, it is not enough just to open the gates of opportunity. All our citizens must have the ability to walk through those gates. And this is the next and the more profound stage of the battle for civil rights. We seek not just freedom, but opportunity. We seek not just legal equity, but human ability. Not just equality as a right and a theory, but equality as a fact and equality as a result.
Okay, so for me, the two key phrases there that showed me when this transition happened, again, from going from movements that started in the church to just acquiescing to whatever the Democrat Party wanted for the black community was. Two sections. One where he said that freedom is not enough. Why not? Why isn't freedom enough? What do you need beyond freedom? You give your children freedom after you've raised them. And you hope they do the best, but you don't like put a roof over their head once they become adults and they're able to walk. You don't, put them in a wheelchair and wheel them around when they're capable of walking. If you do that, you're enslaving them. You're hobbling them. And that is one of the signs to me that that LBJ was more so looking out to benefit his party than black people. The other one he brought up, which is even as blatant, was his saying that the next phase of civil rights. Look, the fight for civil rights, to me, should have ended there. Once the government acquiesced and said that black people have the same rights, voting rights, and rights to marry, and rights, freedom of movement, should have ended it. There's no other room. There's no other place for the government to step in. But when he's talking about the second phase of civil rights, he's talking about that was, to me, the transition from black people being independent and dependent on God as far as that's concerned, but independent from government, to being dependent on the federal government. Because LBJ is the leader of the man of the Great Society, aka the big welfare state. Also, the war on poverty, pouring trillions of dollars over the years into sustaining poverty, to me, because all that money did not really close the wage gap at all. It just made a dependent class, mostly black people. Also, if LBJ was contrite, he would have said, truly contrite, he would have blamed his own party for the chains that were around black people, and he didn't. He just basically made it seem like it was just the entire country when it was not. He had another party that was completely against what his party was doing to black people, but that's not mentioned at all. But look, I can't really speak to the man's heart. Only God can. I don't know what his motives were. I can't say for sure. I can only go by the results. And again, the results of what he wanted were devastation. The welfare state was a catalyst behind the destruction of the black families. I'm more libertarian in certain aspects, so I don't completely blame the government for black people walking, the increase in out-of-wedlock births. Those are individual behaviors and individual choices, but the government definitely had no business making that easier. They should not have made that decision any easier. They should have just stayed out of it. And those are the results of LBJ's Great Society push for black people in the country, not just black people. But there were certain things that LBJ had said in the past that would make me question the sincerity of his speech in Howard University in the 1960s. Because he's famous, of course, for saying this. Even though it's rumored, there's no recording of him saying it. LBJ, I'll have those Negroes voting Democrat for the next 200 years. But there are recordings of him using the N-word quite liberally, and this is also a quote that is his absolutely, and there's no doubt he said this. He said it was a senator in Georgia at the time, and he said, this is LBJ speaking, those Negroes are getting pretty uppity these days, and that's a problem for us since they've got something now they've never had before, the political pull to back up their uppityness. Now we've got to do something about this. We've got to give them a little something just to quiet them down, but not enough to make a difference. That is not someone with, with good intentions. He's just using this to distract people. And I think the little thing he was going to give black people, again, was the welfare state, knowing that it would hobble black people and a lot of Americans too. He had to know, because even 100 years earlier, Frederick Douglass knew what too much interactions and too much quote-unquote help from society, what it would do to black people. He spoke about it in 1865, again, almost 100 years earlier to the day of LBJ going out there with his Great Society program, where, let's see, it's a long speech, but I just want to get to the meat of it, where Frederick Douglass speaks about, he answers the questions, what shall we do with the Negro? Because again, this is right after the Civil War. So, what do we do now for you black people? Well, Frederick Douglass answered that. It starts with, what shall we do with the Negro? I have but one answer from the beginning. do nothing with us. Your doing with us has already played mischief with us. Do nothing with us. If the apples will not remain on the tree of their own strength, if they are worm-eaten to the core, if they are early ripe and disposed to fall, let them fall. I am not for tying or fastening them onto the tree in any way except by nature's plan. And if they will not stay there, let them fall. If the Negro cannot stand on his own legs, let him fall also. All I ask is give him a chance to stand on his own legs. Let him alone. If you see him on his way to school, let him alone. Do not disturb him. If you see him going to dinner at a hotel, let him go. If you see him going to the ballot box, let him alone. Don't disturb him. If you see him going to the workshop, let him alone. Your interference is doing him positive injury. So, Frederick Douglass knew that 100 years before. Human nature doesn't change. LBJ knew that to give someone unearned wealth is to hobble them. And that was the second phase of the civil rights movement under LBJ and the Democrat Party, was to hobble black people. They did not want them to be free. They wanted their votes and they wanted their dependents, and it worked. It does make me think that LBJ, if he didn't say that he'll have the N-words voting Democrats for 200 years, it certainly seems to be the results of his actions. And it's continuing to this day, even though it's dropping off. And that is some hope. I do see, under at least Joe Biden, that the black community is starting to turn away, even though they still vote in vast majorities for the Democrats, and I think they will for quite some time, but they are dropping off. So that's a good sign. Malcolm X, I think, really hit it out of the park regarding black independence and how we should view ourselves. Because one of the negative lessons that were learned from the civil rights era was the belief that ethnic representation in the political sphere will help black people. Like the more black mayors, governors, and eventually president and vice president that we had, the better off we would be as a people. There's no evidence that that's the case. There are more black mayors and governors and VPs, presidents, who are, than Asians have in their community. We are well represented. Black Americans are well represented politically, but economically, the community still remains at the bottom. Asians are way at the top. There aren't many, at least percentage-wise, there are not that many Asian politicians, because they learn that economic empowerment and independence come first. Politics will follow. You could buy a politician once you're rich enough, just to be honest. It's the other way around is not going to help you. You get political power. You won't even really get that. You get a couple of people in politics who are powerful for their own families and friends. They're not going to do much for the community, because that has been the case. You have a lot of black politicians lording over some of the worst neighborhoods in the country. They don't even live there. So there's no benefit for black people, for voting for people, sorry, it's late, depending on just what they look like. That doesn't help whatsoever. Malcolm X, I'll leave you with what he had to say about this whole deal and what black people should really be concentrating on instead of politics.
If white immigrants can come to this country 50 years ago with nickels and dimes and no education, and come here and pool their little nickels and dimes and no education, and set up little stores, develop these stores into larger stores, develop this into an industry which creates job opportunities for whites. Since Lincoln was supposed to have freed the black man 100 years ago, and today the black man, according to the government economists, has spending power of $20 billion per year. We feel that with the black man spending $20 billion a year, not setting up any businesses, not creating any industry, not creating any job opportunities for his own kind, he's not in a moral position to point the finger today at the white man and tell the white man that he's discriminating against him for not giving him a job in factories that he himself set up. If the black man has $20 billion, and these so-called Negro leaders are such geniuses that they can integrate white restaurants and integrate white factories and force themselves into that which the white man has set up, they should use this same ingenuity to show the black people how to pool our wealth and set up something of our own. And then we won't have to force our way into his anymore. One more thing I would like to point out concerning what he said about 125th Street. We don't waste our time on 125th Street, but you can reach more people in the street who want to change than you can in the bourgeoisie society, the bourgeoisie church, and the bourgeoisie circles. Our program is directed toward the man in the street. So we spend our time in the street, and what we do with that man, instead of trying to change the white man in your mind, make you accept us, we change the mind of the black man and make him accept himself. And as soon as he accepts himself, he'll solve his own problem. He won't be trying to force himself into your factory and into your bedroom and into your kitchen.
Now that is a starkly different message from what LBJ said, who said freedom isn't enough. Malcolm X and Frederick Douglass both agree it's more than enough. You make of your life what you can. Life is not fair, but it's not fair for everyone on some level. The last part of Malcolm X's speech reminds me of something I thought of a while ago. It's a question I've asked, and it's this: who does more damage to the black community, a Klansman or a white leftist? And my answer is a white leftist. A Klansman only thinks or believes that I'm genetically inferior. A white leftist is trying to convince me that I'm genetically inferior. That is much more damaging. What I think of myself is way more important than what others think of me. And that was the message that Malcolm X was trying to push out there. But that's all I got to say on this comment. So, what do you got to say? Comment, like, share, and subscribe.